Welcome back,
Yeah.
everybody. I think that in light of recent events and everything, the U.S. election just ended over here last week, a week ago.
Yeah, I think it was last week. Yeah.
Today, I guess. And we had a couple topics in mind. And then, pricing is always a big one. We could talk about it almost every show. People like what prices to put on things, how to price yourself, what happens when the market changes. Leading up to the election, the market is typically kind of slow. It's really not for any good reason, I don't think, because no matter who gets into office, the sun comes up the next day. People have to get back to work. People have to spend money. Any changes that any particular administration makes typically takes years to take effect. So we're getting a swell of everything now because the election's over, Trump won. So a lot of people that think he's good for the economy, and in some respects he is, in some ways he's not, depending upon, like, if you look at long term, there's a lot of nuanced stuff there. It's like during COVID, we all ran out and bought toilet paper, but nobody really knew why. It's the same thing now. It's like he won the election, so now everything's booming, which is great. It's awesome because it was super slow their first couple of months. So that kind of sparked the idea of maybe we should talk about pricing a little bit, because that coupled with AI and things that we used to be able to charge more for that we can't now. And then where do you find that balance? Because the market's really, really tough. And I've been looking at Upwork. I monitor that a lot. That's where I've had a lot of success at. There just weren't any job postings and anything. So that's the whole point of today, is kind of take a look at how to price yourself, just the market in general. We did a show a few weeks ago about the state of the market, just how shitty it was, how nobody was hiring for anything. So before we get into all that, dude, what's going on down there? We haven't caught up on anything else.
Well, first of all, I was making dinner last night and I cut part of my thumb off, so that was real fun. I got the old classic handyman duct tape, but I took off some of the nail and part of the thumb, but it's not like it's that bad, but it's sensitive. And of course, whenever you have a cut or something like that, you touch it on everything. So everything
it's on your hands. Yeah, it's on your fucking hand. You got to use it to type and do everything. Yeah.
And then I've started changing up my morning routine. So, everyone's heard, I shouldn't say everyone, but people probably heard of Albert Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I was looking at trying to, change trajectory of business, acquire more leads, higher paying leads. And I kind of noticed that I was doing the exact same thing, but what my mind was telling me to do is just do the more of the same thing. Like, if I'm not getting results I want, why don't change what I'm doing? Just do more of it, work more, talk to more people. So I was doing the same thing. So I switched it up a little bit. And today was the first day of switching up. So normally I would wake up around 5:45, 6 o'clock, and then I'd have some water, make some coffee, I'd do my journal, and then get right into work. And what I did today instead is I did a little work on myself instead. So I woke up, did the same coffee, water, and then I actually rolled my motorcycle down to the beach. I did a half an hour walk, and then I sat there, did some groundings, watched the sunrise, and then walked back, came home, had a shower, and I'm feeling a lot more productive, a lot more energy. And I took the time in the morning to do, some work for myself, and just, I had music in for some of it, listening to like tropical beach vibes. And then when the sun was coming up, I took the headphones out and just listened to the water crashing on the ocean, on the shore. And it was a nice change, and I feel a lot more rejuvenated. And I worked for me and myself first, and now it's time to work.
I'm supposed to be doing yoga every day because I'm not flexible, and as you get older, it's just, it's the one thing I'm not great at a lot of physical things, but I'm okay strength wise. I'm okay, and I can still run pretty far, but I'm not flexible. So, what I do is I get up in the morning, and this is the mistake I make. And everybody does this, and it sounds like you beat it today. Mm-hmm. Is that first thing in the morning? Most of our shit's on here, to including our alarm clocks and everything. I get up and I'm like, well, I'm not going to deal with anything work related or answer anything. But it's hard because you pick this up and you have to use it. Like, even like you said, going to the beach and listening to music, you probably had to have this with you anyway. Yeah. So it's tough to I'm going to get into that shit, but I'm not going to get into it until 8, 9, 10 o'clock, whatever you want to put on it. It's really fucking hard to do that. And so anyway, to your point about doing stuff first for yourself and getting it over with, because that way you've done it. Like, you've already won the morning, like now. Mm-hmm. I didn't do my yoga or stretching or anything this morning, because I'm like, I'll get to it later. I'm not going to get to it later. It's just not going to fucking happen. So, but it's tough. I've done that before, what you're talking about, and it just changes the trajectory of the entire day. Even if you have a tough day, it just feels better throughout. But it's so hard in the morning to get up and look at this. And even if you're just turning an alarm off, or just, did somebody in my family call me? Is there anything urgent? You can't help but see all that other shit. So how did you make it through that this morning?
Well, first of all, me and my partner, we actually have like a rule. We don't sleep with our phones in our room, just for, frequencies and rave. It helps. And so what I use for an alarm, I use my watch. Now my watch, I I turn off every notification on here except for direct phone calls. So my phone's in airplane mode. I'm not going to get a phone call. So I use this for an alarm. So the hard part is remembering to charge it before you go to bed, because it's usually, when you wear it all day, it's, at 9 o'clock, it's 10%. You're like, oh shit, so you got to stay up. But yeah, I use this for an alarm clock, and then I wake up. I mean, I still grab my phone for music, but it's on airplane mode, so I don't have any notifications. There's nothing on there. So as soon as I turn it on, then they'll come in. So for music, I just have all my playlists downloaded on my phone, so I don't need data and I don't need internet service, right? So I can just go right onto the app itself on Spotify, listen to my playlist, and then once it's done, I turn it on, and then it's the bombardment of bing, 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 bing notifications of everything, right? And so it's easiest to do, airplane mode. Use your watch as an alarm, and then that kind of helps alleviate the looking and the scrolling.
Yeah, and it could cut both ways, because I've had mornings where I've done exactly that, and that worked. I also find sometimes that if I get up real quick before I go do something, like you went to the beach this morning, like before I go for a walk or whatever, sometimes it actually puts me at ease, not always, if I check all my messages, because then I'm like, okay, today's not going to be so bad. Like, I'm caught up. Because sometimes I try to do yoga or other things. I use yoga as an example. Sometimes I try to do shit like that, and I'm so anxious. I'm like, what if I'm missing something important right now? So I've actually done it both ways. I'm not sure if either way is better than the other. Sometimes it's nice to be like, I just went through all my shit. Everything's good to go. I can actually take a couple hours to myself this morning. And sometimes it works the other way around.
I think it comes down to willpower as well. Like if you have the intention of like just looking at your messages to see if anything actually major and important, if it's a family member or someone died, or like if your dad's trying to call you or something like that, then you can look at those messages. But if you just open it up, see if there's any of those, if none of, like, basically maybe even write down a list of non-negotiables or exceptions. Like if this or this is there, I'll respond. Everything else, get to it later. So you kind of have like your non-negotiables, like these are like, I have to respond to these. And I would try my best to make none of them work related. They all have to be immediate family, spouse, like that. If it's hey, urgent, my website's not working. Well, guess what? You've been sleeping all for fucking 8 hours anyways. What's one more hour, right? It's going to be, if there's a problem with a website or something, or whatever business you're in, that problem is going to be there when you get back. So there's no point ruining your morning session for that, I think.
I would be the one that's like, oh my God, I got to handle this right now. Within reason, of course. I'm not going to wait till noon to jump on things. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's tough. It's a work in progress. I've tried that. What you've done this morning, I've tried that. It works every time. Like even having a conversation now about it, that sounds really good. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Will I do it tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it does work. I can attest to that. It's hard. It's like a daily thing. And you also have to set yourself up for success in the morning too. Some things I put off at night, and I know needs to be done at a certain time in the morning. Like I had something today. We're in the middle of that e-com, whatever. Everybody wants fucking emails and everything. And I could have done more last night to have my morning be better. But again, that's the human condition. We're just constantly rolling things over.
Yeah.
Habits, just habits.
And I think a lot of it too is because we're creatures of habit, right? So if we've done the same routine every morning, trying something new, like going to the beach, walking, meditating, and doing that, it's shifting our pattern. And we don't like humans, like we like comfortability, and it's hard to get outside of that comfortability factor, right? So even though it's probably good for you, you're going to be anxious and nervous and thinking like, oh no, I should be working right now. Like this is the time to catch up. It's hard to break those patterns. But like I said, like, Albert Einstein's definition, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that's insanity. So I was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Like, I'm just going to do more LinkedIn. I'm going to do more messaging. I'm going to do more work. And it's just it's a recipe for failure. So I think if you start looking at it from like, okay, I need to make these changes, you're going to make those changes. And it's day one. I'm going to do it again tomorrow, and then that'll become my new habit, right?
I love to tell this story. We've said it before. I just love it so much. From Atomic Habits by James Clear, the guy he used as an example that wanted to exercise. He was overweight, never went to the gym, and he did it in such small increments. Like the first day of wanting to get healthy and go to the gym, he set his alarm. He woke up, got out of bed, put his gym clothes on, and just didn't leave the house. And like, I don't remember exactly what the increments and phases were. And then the next phase was he would go get in his car and drive to the gym, but he wouldn't go in the gym. He just made the drive. Yeah. And then eventually he would go in the gym, and he's like, I'm only going to stay for 5 minutes. I'm going to walk around, maybe check out how some of the equipment works. but I'm not going to force myself to be here for an hour. And that sounds kind of silly, but he ended up being very successful and got into great shape because he's like, I'm just going to start really small and just start doing these little things, because in our minds we're like, it's got to be all or nothing. I got to get up, I got to do a million things. I have to do 30 minutes of yoga when I could easily do 7 minutes and be like, okay, I did it, kind of stuff. So we also there's also that, but you're exactly right about the habits.
Exactly. And I think you make a very good point there. I mean, a lot of people, like, let's say if you've lived a very unhealthy lifestyle, you eat junk food, you like watch Netflix all the time. Well, if you all of a sudden the next day ate nothing but fucking salad, chicken, you try going for a 2-hour run, you'd be so exhausted and it'd be so foreign to you. You'd be like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, so you got to like definitely start small. Right. And I like that idea because it's so foreign. Like, if you're, especially for people that work in offices and stuff like that, their morning routines usually wake up, coffee, breakfast. If you have kids, it's feed the kids, drive them to school, and then work. So like your mentality is like, I have no room for anything else. Well, how about instead of like watching the news in the morning, go for a walk? Instead of, there's some leeway, but obviously if wake up earlier, right? Even that.
Yeah.
So.
We talked about before how the work-life balance, and there's that spectrum of like the super hustle bros over here that were 80 hours a week kind of thing, and then the ones over here that are like 4 hours a week. It depends what you're doing. If you're building something, if you're doing something new, you have to put the time in. And if you've set yourself up for passive income and you're able to coast, then yes, then you have all that time. But so when I was on my retreat, I had 12 days of, and for those that didn't watch the episode, I went on a 12-day silent retreat at a monastery in Michigan, of all places. And it was a meditation retreat, but they fed you there. You didn't have anything. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't exercise. You didn't have your phone. Couldn't talk to anybody else that was there, which was fine. I didn't know any of those guys anyway. Point being, I detoxed from caffeine, protein, because they served like all vegetarian stuff, which is, I don't mind that food, but I do need a lot of protein though. Mm-hmm. I like steak and stuff. I mean, nothing against vegan and vegetarian food. Not my thing. That's all they serve, so I didn't have a choice. So I detoxed from a lot of things, to include, the phone, like we've been talking about with the messages and the habits and trying to start your day off right. And a lot of people were like, oh, that's great. We should all do that. We should all take a few days off. But what you don't realize, to your point about people needing to be productive, is that trying to get away from caffeine and trying to alter your stuff in the extreme, trying to go all in on a new habit or a new thing, you're going to burn yourself out. I was able to do that on that retreat because I was sitting on a pillow all day or in my bed, because you can't leave the building. It's like you're either in the meditation hall or you're laying in your bed meditating, but I was sleeping. And then they fed me. I didn't have to think about anything. Those days without caffeine or without protein or without like a lot of food or whatever, I was exhausted, but it didn't matter. It didn't have any of my electronics. I didn't have to think. So again, you have to take this really super small. If you want to cut down on your caffeine, which is very healthy, it's great for sleep. People who don't like drink a lot of coffee or drink coffee past noon or whatever, it's great for your sleep. But it's easier said than done. You can't just stop that shit, because if I'd said, hey, I'm not going to drink coffee and I'm going to fast, I'm not going to eat for 4 days, well, then I'm not going to fucking get anything done, because you're just going to be lethargic. So you're exactly right. Instead of like, I'm just going to go straight no carbs, I'm going to run 10 miles in the morning. You can't do that either. So I think, but in our minds, we're like, well, I got to go all in.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me of a time in my life. So about 8-9 years ago, I was having this one weird like skin condition where every morning around 10 o'clock, my entire face, it'd be like red lines and everything would just be beet red. Like it'd be so hot, and I'd like, I could put like a melted ice cube on it, and and then when I wake up in the morning, it'd be gone. And then all of a sudden around 9-10 o'clock, it'd be these red lines and just be like red.
Like the plague. So,
yeah, but I went to the ER, went to the doctors, I had a dermatologist appointment. No one could figure it out. So then what I did was I started doing some testing on myself. So I figured, okay, maybe it's an allergy. Maybe I'm allergic to something. So I cut myself off. First I did no dairy, and then I did no gluten, then I did no sugar. But I did it in a stage, instead of being like, I'm just going to eat all meat and just cut everything out, I would have failed, right? Because but I did it smartly, and like I said, just did in increments. I did a week of no bread, didn't see change. Now I did a week of no bread and no sugar, didn't see a change. I did a week of no bread, no sugar, no dairy. So I did it in segments, because then by the end of it, I found out what it was. And I was actually, it was an allergy to a certain vegetable. I forget what it was, but it was just made my skin red. So, but they couldn't figure it out. They did allergy testing, but they don't test like, zucchini, carrot, onion. I forget which vegetable it was. It was like, I honestly forget what it was, but it was such a rare thing, but it was in some sort of mixes. But if I would have just cut out everything at once, I never would have found out what the problem was, because it would have been too hard. I would have tried going all in on figuring it out, but I did it in segments. So, but yeah, it was a scary time. And like, I thought I was allergic to exhaust, because I was running equipment at the time. So then I went and worked on it. It was an ordeal in my life, and yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. Speaking in terms of food allergies and things, but this applies to a lot of things in life. We'll have to have Brittany Carpenter on, because she has a lot of thoughts about food sensitivity tests, because a lot of times, a little off topic, but it applies. A lot of times you'll take a food sensitivity test over the counter thinking that you're allergic to one thing, but just because your body builds up antibodies to a certain thing, like I may eat grapes, which don't cause any reaction in me, but my body may, when they're in my system, may register. And so people are like, oh, I'm allergic to that. So yeah, you did the smart thing by kind of like doing an investigation, like, okay, this is not this, it's this. But yeah, man.
Yeah, it's right. And that's, I think, like we've kind of segmented into habits here, but it's developing new habits and taking things slowly. It's the amount of people, like, especially the reason why like gyms see this high influx of New Year's resolutioners, and then all of a sudden by end of January, February, most people fail out, is because they have this big incentive, like, this year I'm going to lose all this weight, and then they go all in, and then after a month they're so burnt out and tired because they're still developing the habits. They don't know what to do. They're starving themselves. They're working out 7 days a week, and then by the end of it, they're just exhausted. So if you look at that as more of an extreme example, same thing with any new habit. You want to change your morning routine up, start slow, wake up half an hour earlier, and then 45 minutes earlier, and then an hour. Like, don't just be like, okay, I usually wake up at 8, let's try 5 a.m. Like, you're not going to do it. You're going to wake up, you're going to be like, it's fucking dark, especially in the winter. Right?
Oh, it's bad enough when you wake up in the morning, and I don't mind waking up and having it dark outside, but when you wake up and it's dark and you get hit in the face with negative 20 degrees or whatever that is, and negative 20 in freedom units, whatever it is in Celsius, it's fucking cold, man.
Negative 20 is like negative 35, I think. It's cold.
It hurts. It's the stinging cold, yeah.
I remember my buddy says to me, like, we're outside work, it's like minus 50 Celsius. He's like, why do I work in a place where the air hurts my face?
Yeah. Hurts your nose and your ears if they get exposed. Yeah. Now it reminds me, we're talking about habits and like long term. Everything feels so insurmountable. Like you mentioned, the gym memberships, they sign up, they don't stick it out, and they're like, this is going to take me a year to lose weight, or it's going to take. It applies to business. It's going to take a year of this or that to make any decent money, whatever category you want to throw on it.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of it, it's going to take 6 months for me to get to the shape that I'm comfortable in, of going to the gym, even doing like a little bit here and there. But fast forward 6 months, like if I look back 6 months or a year from now, well, that flew by. So when it's ahead of you, it feels like it's going to take forever. But when it's over, you're like, oh shit, it's a year later. I'm doing well in this part of my life, So you have to think about it like that too. Like when this is over, when this long period is over that you think is so like hard to vision right now, it's not going to seem like it was that long.
Well, I think a lot of people, what happens is people get attached to the outcome, right? Their mind is on, I need to lose 20 pounds. I need to bulk up. I need to get 100 new clients. So whatever it might be, everyone's habits that they're creating is focused, and their mindset is on the end result. And when that happens is you completely forget about all the progress you've made. So let's say, in a year from now, you lose 50 pounds, right? And so you get there, end of the year, and you've only lost 30. So now you're disappointed. You're upset with yourself. I had this goal. I've been working so hard for a year. I didn't make it. Well, if you focus on just the actual progress, like the day-to-day progress and like the journey of the new habit, no matter what happens, you're going to see results. But when people are focused on like, I need to make 10 grand this year. I mean, my goal was to make 10K in a month this year. I did it once at the beginning of the year, and I've been close ever since. But, so instead of me getting upset about, I didn't make 10K this month, right? Well, I track all my income. I've slowly been, 5, 6, 7, 75, 8, like it's slowly building up. But if I would have had the mindset of like, disappointment of not getting that result, I would have missed out on all the actual progress I've made. So same with habits, right? If you want to run a marathon, well, if you get upset after 2 months that you haven't ran a full marathon, well, think about it. You used to not run it fucking at all, and now you're running 4 miles. Now you're running 5 miles, right? So, I think it's a big thing.
I just listened to Matthew McConaughey on Modern Wisdom. It's another podcast. Chris Williams' podcast is great, and he was saying that like Americans and like Western, like me, Canadians, Americans, whatever, so focused on the outcome, like you just said. like we try to quantify everything. Matthew McConaughey was in Italy with an older couple, and they're 80 years old or whatever, and they would swim every day. And they were like, well, how far do you swim? And the woman, whatever, was like, until I feel like I don't want to swim anymore. But because in his mind, he was like, no, we're in the West, or the Americans were like, well, like we got to put this on a spreadsheet. Like, what do you like? How, did you make it a mile and a half today? Did you make it a mile and a quarter or kilometers, whatever? But in their minds, and this is a healthy way to like, well, I just went until I just didn't feel like doing it anymore. But we have a problem over here. We need to quantify everything. We need to put a number on everything. We need to, like, if we don't hit this goal, we failed.
I think I just included something. I think the reason why it's kind of a perpetual cycle or loop. If every American and Canadian now just went with, I went until I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore, we wouldn't do it at all, because our mindset is we're so true. Like we're so goal orientated that we have to get this far. We have to make this. We have to make this kind of money. So because we have these, like, we're fixated on the destination, the outcome, that we work until we get there. And if we say, you know, well, work until you feel like you don't want to work anymore, well, people just quit halfway through. And because they're not fixated on the goal, they can do that and actually achieve more, because again, they go until they feel satisfied or happy. But we want that end result, that our happiness is when we reach that end destination.
I don't know what the good way to go is. I can make an argument to the prosperity we have over here because of everybody having that mindset. And I could also, when I've spent time in Spain and other places in Europe, I'm like, everybody seems very chill over here. So I don't know what's better, but either way, well, there's our conversation about pricing, everybody, that we never fucking had. So we'll definitely, you know what the next show is going to be about, but we appreciate everybody hanging in there for our habits. Hopefully we touch a little something today, and we do appreciate everybody watching and listening. As much as I hate to say it, please hit like, subscribe, whatever those buttons are that I don't even pay attention to anymore, but I'm told that I have to. And it's free, and it helps us out.
And it's your way of paying it forward. Do a little gratitude today, give back to the community. It doesn't cost you anything to send out a like and subscribe. So I do it to everyone that I meet that says they have a podcast, even if I'm never going to watch it. I just subscribe anyways to show some support and give the love, right? So what comes around goes around. And if you guys got a podcast as well, comment on us. We'll follow you guys. We'll subscribe to yours as well, and we'll do a little pay it forward thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Make it a habit. Make it a habit, people. Push that button. So, all right, everybody. Till next time.